Hello and welcome to 6 Parts. Today I'm gonna start a new series, What If Deku Had the Infinity Gauntlet, Part 1. If you enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Equal people aren't born, even though that's not true. All of us are born of the same species on the same planet in the same universe and can breathe. What was different about some people? More than 80% of people are born with quirks or superpowers. It used to be race or money, but that's just how people are. Someone will always find a way to be better than someone else just so they can look down on them. Izuku Midoriya was one of the others in society, which was bad for him. Everyone looked down on this boy because he didn't have any quirks. They thought he had some kind of disability just for being human. He wanted to be a hero more than anything else, maybe not the best hero, but still a hero. That man's smile and good mood were always a bright spot in his otherwise dark world. All Might was his hero. Izuku wanted to be that light in someone else's life. He felt like he owed it to someone to be their light, just like All Might was his. Until that hero told him to give up on his hopes. That is, until he saw All Might for what he was. It was one thing for Kacchan to pick on him and tell him every day that he was a flaky nobody who would never be a hero. No matter how much that hurt his confidence and sense of self-worth, he could still do it. But to hear the same thing from the main hero, that broke my heart. I guess I can't be a hero. Okay. Izuku finally gave up and sighed. You win the world. No matter what was going on in the streets, he didn't bother stopping to write it down. He could no longer use any of his notes, scientific formulas, diagrams, or sketches for tools and gadgets. He was no longer interested. Afternoon that day at home, Izuku looked at his wall full of hero posters and magazine cutouts with a sad face. He slowly reached up and started to take them down. He then got a trash bag from the kitchen, opened it, and put everything inside. It appears your son is quirkless. I'm sorry, but he won't be able to be a hero. He threw all of his notebooks into the bag. Next were all of his ideas, sketches, and diagrams for gadgets and devices that could act like a quirk. He got rid of all of his math problems that were used for these theories and made up projects as well. I'm sorry, Izuku. There were many comic books, manga, and graphic novels in Izuku's closet. He took them all out and looked through them. Comics from both Japan and the US were there. He liked how Marvel and DC's comics created worlds with lots of different characters and stories. He no longer saw any point in them, so they go in the trash. I'm sorry, kid, but without a quirk you can't be a hero. We risk our lives every day. It's not something a quirkless person can do. Try being an officer. Sure, it's not the most glamorous job, but it's still a noble profession. Last but not least, the All Might stuff he kept had to go. He looked up to that man as a hero. A hero who smiled and saved people, and who always told people not to give up. When Izuku finally met him, the #1 hero told him to give up. He even saw the hero's real body, which was a thin man who hid his muscles with a mask. Hide the weak body below. It opened my eyes so much. Not only did his hopes of becoming a hero fail, but it also turned out that All Might, the hero he looked up to, was just a fake. 3 hours a day. He could just as easily be one of the made-up heroes in those old comic books. Licking his title and fame like a leech, even if it makes him sick. Like all these fake heroes in today's society that is crazy about quirks. They only cared about money and fame. It wasn't cool to want to be a hero who only saved people. Kacchan was a great example because he always talked about how great and wealthy he was as a hero. But the way he treated Izuku, you'd think he'd be better off as a bad guy. It was just the way people are. They never did anything for free, they always wanted something, and these fakes in costumes were no different. How did the real heroes get away? The ones like in his comics. The ones that these stupid fakers said they were. At the sight of his empty room, Izuku's mind started to fill with anger and disgust. If I had a quirk, I wouldn't be like them, the boy with green hair thought. But when he realized he couldn't change it, it made him feel down. What could a boy who didn't have any quirks do to make the world a better place? To make the world a better place? The doctor, Kacchan, and All Might say that there is nothing? His sad sigh turned into tears as he said, people really aren't born equal. But he wanted to hear one person say he could be a hero. He always knew he would never be one. That was it. Just one voice in the roar of cries that he couldn't do anything to say that they thought a boy with no quirks could do great things. That would have been enough to make the pain and heartache go away. As he walked back to the closet, he made sure that nothing was left behind. He looked up and saw one comic book sitting alone on the top shelf. He picked it up, brought it to his face, and looked at the cover. He gave himself a small smile as he thought about this one. The bad guy technically wins, but even though what he did was horrible, he did it because he thought it was the right thing to do. Setting everything in balance and making it work the way it should. As he turned the pages, he stopped on a very epic drawing of a bad guy with purple skin holding up a gauntlet-covered hand as if to snap his fingers. His green eyes kept going back to the stone gauntlet as his mind raced at 100 miles per hour. A thought came to Izuku all of a sudden. He felt like this comic made him think of an interesting article he read a while ago. After putting the book on his desk, he went to the trash can and looked through it for some of his notebooks. When the boy with the freckles found the right one, he opened it and found his notes and a printout of a scientific discussion. A scientist in Germany apparently came up with a liquid serum that could temporarily change a person's behavior if they drank it or had it injected into their blood vein. A sentence that was highlighted said, "Just a few seconds." The serum was made from concentrated DNA of people who were mentally ill, but the research team had to give up on it because they hit a dead end. Izuku was puzzled by this. It was thought that the serum, which was part of Project Prometheus, was a failure because the time limits could never be extended. After going over his notes on the formulas that were written up in the article, he had to ask himself if they were going in the wrong direction. If a quirk could be sped up to become a liquid, could it also be sped up to become a solid? As an example, a small stone that could be attached to a tool and let the person using it use a quirk that the stone was based on. Izuku got out some blank paper and began to write down some equations. Even though he didn't have a quirk, he was very good at science and math. He would have graduated from middle school a year ago if not for his silly dream to go to UA. Being smart as a genius was the only thing that made him feel better after the universe took away his quirk. It's too bad that someone with such a strong mind wasn't even thought of as interesting in a world where quirks are everything. The next morning Izuku wanted to laugh with joy as he said, "Yes, this is it. This is it." He worked on this equation all night and finally got it right. A way to get the essence of a quirk from someone's DNA and concentrate it so that it forms a stone. His formula was based on the idea behind Project Prometheus, but it should work, right? He was so close, though. A few lines of math could make someone without any quirks into the strongest person in the world. The only thing he needed was something to attach the stones to once they were made. But what kind of magic trick should he make? He thought that he might as well go with what the comic that inspired him said. Izuku smiled as he thought about the future hero society he would build with the Infinity Gauntlet. No more fake heroes and con artists like All Might. There won't be any problems. Balanced just right. Only letting people in who he thought were real heroes. His old dream of becoming a hero was over, but he promised that his new dream would come true. One thing was wrong, though. Where am I going to get the money to make it? Okay, are all of you ready? Izuku asked with a lot of excitement. The thieves thought he was crazy when they saw him. They were ready to rob a bank, not go to a theme park. They didn't expect this kid to be at all. In the underground, word was getting around about a person with a certain set of skills. Villains have been hiring him to look at the weak spots of certain heroes and help them plan how to commit different crimes. It looked like he was a genius who worked for anyone who paid the most. His real name was unknown. He used the name Apotheosis instead. A boy with green eyes and hair who was wearing a black scarf around the lower half of his face to hide his more noticeable features. He was also wearing dark gray pants, boots, and black leather gloves. With a bit of an awkward stutter, the kid always seemed to have a good mood. The criminals didn't say anything bad about him, though. He did a good job. Izuku laughed and rubbed his head in a strange way. Okay. I don't know what else to say. Gee, good luck everyone. Fuck you, kid, said one of the masked bad guys. This plan of yours better work. Izuku said, it will, with full confidence. He has already helped 3 criminal groups break into and steal from 6 banks, so this one will be easy. The boys with green hair stayed behind as the men got out of the black van. He was sitting in a small office chair with a laptop on his lap. He had paid for it with money from one of his previous jobs. He got live video of what was going on inside the bank from the screen. The security systems were broken into by Izuku, who then ran a virus he made called the Phantom Program. It pretty much took over all the camera's footage, looped any recording he wanted, and stopped the current feed. That is, the bad guys who hired him could not be seen at all when they broke into the locked bank. The silent alarm was turned off as well. He said in his headset, "This is going very well," as he watched them break open the vault. One of them was magnetically odd, which let them change the tumblers and locks on the doors to get into anything. This is very helpful for robbing a bank. After 30 minutes, they had all the money in bags and were ready to go to the van. Izuku sipped his coffee. He had timed everything just right down to the last detail. Even this part after this one. A voice yelled from the open door of the bank, "Stop right there." The bad guys stopped moving. One of them growled, "Damn it. A hero." Flare, a hero who had only been around for at least 2 years, stood out in the dark. A unique trait of this hero made his hands glow with fire and let him throw small, quick balls of fire. Izuku said through the headset, "As I planned." The third bad guy yelled into the mic, "You knew he would show up." Of course, Izuku had this all planned out. He knew that heroes often patrolled this area because it was a hub of sorts. He looked at how often they went on patrol and chose this night in particular so that this hero would be here instead of any of the others. "You little brat!" yelled another thug over the mic. They aimed their guns at Flare right as the hero was about to fire some balls at them. Izuku spoke softly while pressing a key on his keyboard and said, "Fire detected near the bank." The fire sprinklers went off all of a sudden, flooding the building with water and putting out the hero's fire. Since Flare's abilities were no longer working, one of his partners used his low-level speed to run up to him and hit him over the head with a gun, knocking him out. "I thought you guys would have a bit more faith in me. You can trust that I wouldn't set you up," Izuku said. Setting off the sprinkler system would have been the easiest way to kill Flare out of all the heroes that could have been patrolling the area. I agree with what he said. He planned this perfectly. Please lock Flare in the vault and get the bags together. We have less than. Izuku looked at his watch. 10 minutes before the firefighters arrive. As if impressed, the man with the magnetic quirk said, "Damn. I really underestimated this kid." The others were also very impressed. It was really smart of Apotheosis to plan this heist. Izuku smiled and said, "Good job, everyone." He was pleased with the work and knew that his pay would allow him to begin working on his many projects. The next morning after counting his money, Izuku let out a yawn. He had a lot of money hidden under his bed after getting paid from the recent theft. Izuku had been working with criminals and bad guys in the underground. He used his intelligence and strategic thinking to plan their crimes and find holes in the heroes they fought. He could only get a lot of money that way. He could not just walk into hero agencies and say, "Hey, I'm a boy without any quirks and I'd like to help." If they didn't tell him to leave, they'd at least laugh him out of the building. People didn't take people without quirks seriously, which is sad. A scarf over his face and a fake name helped him hide who he was. His tracks were also very well hidden, so no one could ever find him. Izuku didn't choose a name until the end of the day, when he sat in class all day writing down possible names on a piece of paper. He liked the idea that it could mean the pinnacle of progress or someone's rise to divine status, so that's what he called himself. Also, it sounded good. He had been working on plans for the key to making this dream come true ever since his old dream of becoming a hero died and his new dream of making a better hero society that didn't look down on the weak took over. The Infinity Gauntlet was a device that could give Izuku not just one quirk, but all of the coolest quirks anyone had ever seen. He needed to make stones that would give him the power to make his new world. Izuku had to first check to see if his math and theory were right. He was going to build the machine he came up with, which he called the Forge. It worked a lot like a big factory, taking the weird genes out of DNA and turning them into a solid form. The stones would power the gauntlet and give Izuku the same quirk-like powers. But he was also dealing with something else at the moment. The forge took up a lot of room because it was so big. Where is he going to build it? He needed a real lab to work in and make his devices. Izuku put on his school uniform and said, "I'll think about this later." He was going to move closer to his goals today. He couldn't let anything bad happen, unless Kachan chose to act like a jerk again today. The ashy blonde boy was already a pain, but since that sludge bad guy took him hostage, he's been even worse. He may have learned that he wasn't as safe as he thought after what happened. Izuku laughed and said, "How sad that the poor explosion boy wasn't strong enough to protect himself from a weak sludge villain." Katsuki Bakugo had never felt truly weak before. Unfortunately for Izuku, and because he is a bully, the event made him want to boost his ego and feel better about himself again. Izuku had no choice but to sit there and take it because that was the best way to get Deku to do what they wanted. He yawned again on his way to school because the theft from last night went on longer than he thought. It took the thugs Izuku worked with 3 hours to count every penny of the money they stole to make sure everyone got an equal share. Izuku was mentally and physically worn out by the end. He was still healthy enough to get what he needed to do today at school done. He skipped his class and went straight down the hall to the principal's office. He was told to go to room 305. Because his mother asked for it, he was the only one who could take a test that would let him finish middle school early. After getting a perfect score on the test last week, he had to take an IQ test and a placement test today in room 305. The results of these tests would help decide which schools he could get into. Izuku wanted to go to a certain boarding school across Tokyo. He would have to move away from home to get there, but it would give him a new environment and let him keep working on his projects in secret. After one school day, he was done. It didn't surprise Izuku that he was the only one taking the test. I don't mean to put down the school, but it didn't have the smartest people. Plus, not many people knew you could finish school early. Izuku didn't want to think about it too much because it was the last time he would ever be in this building, so he went to his old classroom to get some of his things. While he was still in the room, most of the students had already left. Luckily, one of the last people he needed to see was just getting ready to leave. "Deku, why are you still here so late?" Bakugo asked with a sneer. He pursed his lips and chose not to pay attention to him. When he opened his desk, he took out his extra notebooks and a flash drive that he used to save ideas. Izuku walked to the door with his things packed in his backpack and looked up to see a burning hand on his shoulder. "Hey, I asked you a question." The blonde boy was barking. "Don't ignore me, you piece of shit." Izuku had to wipe a drop of spit off his face. Izuku said in the least loud voice possible, "I just came to get my things. If you keep being weak, they won't be able to see him coming." Bakugo asked, "Where were you?" Izuku answered with a shy look, "Taking a test." "What test?" "A T-test to see if I should graduate early." "You? What's so great about your flawless behind that they let you graduate before me?" Izuku finally got tired of this fake interrogation, so he moved his shoulders slightly and shuffled out the door. "I don't answer to you," the boy with freckles told the other. Katsuki was shocked by the bright light. He thought Deku had never seen the nerd look at him so seriously before. He chased after the boy with green hair to show that he was still in charge. "You. It doesn't take early graduates, Deku, so if you're trying to get in before me." The other boy's eyes got really big when Izuku cut him off and said, "I'm not going to UA. I took back my application because I wanted to go to a boarding school on the other side of the city. We won't be meeting again. You got what you wanted, Kachan. Goodbye." He waved him off and walked out of the school, breaking up with him for good. She yelled, "Wait! Hold up, Deku!" and chased him down the street. Izuku sighed and turned around. "What do you mean you're not going to UA?" "Just what I said. I've decided to stop trying to be a hero and be more realistic," All Might had told him. He remembered what he had said. Izuku couldn't wait to see the number one hero's face when he told him how real he was going to do things. Katsuki said with a smug grin, "So you finally realized you can never beat me." "Go up against you?" Izuku thought to himself. "Your attitude and the damage you can do to other people would make you the worst hero ever." "Yup. I'm going to try my hand at technology and maybe I can build devices to help the police." The boy with the explosion told him, "It doesn't matter what you build. A hero could do 100 times better anything you make." "Oh, just wait," he said with a smirk. Izuku said, "Well, have a nice life, Kachan," and then he left the other boy's life for good. Bamogu stood there in shock, realizing that he would never see Deku again and that he was gone for good. He really wasn't sure how he felt about it. The boy without any quirks had been pushed around for years, so he didn't think the other boy would just up and leave. "Deku!" He yelled in anger as he stomped off, which was his usual reaction. That night when he was done soldering the wires and circuit boards for his first device together, Izuku smiled and said, "There we go." He got a hold of some technology that was used in prisons to keep bad guys in their cells through one of his jobs that involved bringing illegal goods into the country. A device that was usually attached to turrets and could tell when a quirk was activated. He made a smaller version that he could wear on the side of his head. It had one lens, which Izuku took from a pair of red aviator sunglasses and put over his eye, making it look like a monocle. The device's main job was to find a nearby quirk user, show them a number from 1 to 100 that showed how much power they had, and record that number. The name, Scouter, came from a made-up gadget that Izuku got the idea for from reading the manga Dragon Ball. Izuku smiled as he put the Scouter around his ear and said, "Time to test it." He could see clearly through the red, clear lens that covered his left eye. He turned it on by pressing one of the small buttons on the clip behind his ear. The boy with freckles looked at the lens as it turned on. When he pressed the second button, he finally saw the numbers he was looking for. "Let's see who's around. The person closest to me has a quirk level 7. That must be Mom," Izuku said. He pressed a few more buttons to increase the range and promised himself that he would upgrade the Scouter to a hands-free version so that he could record all the quirk users in the apartment building. Izuku laughed and said, "Seems like I'm not so useless after all." He was proud of his first invention. Otherwise Shigaraki Tamura asked, "So who is this guy again?" "His name is Apotheosis, and he's a young up-and-coming bad guy, a lot like you," Kurogiri said as he looked over the folder of information that Sensei had gathered. "He assists villains and criminals by planning out their crimes. He's very strategic." The light blue-haired teen slouched at the bar and said, "He must not be very good if I haven't heard of him." "He recently began. Since then he has been involved with over 20 acts of villainy and every one of them was a complete success," the black man said. "Not a single failure?" Shigaraki asked, a little confused. 10 robberies, 6 assaults on heroes, transportation of illegal weapons and technology, and various other crimes that have not been made public yet," Kurogiri said. A voice on the monitor behind them said, "He's exactly what this league needs." This caught their attention right away. The unknown man said, "Kurogiri, find a real strategist who can help us reach our goals." "Okay, let's send him an invitation," Kurogiri said. Then he warped off to meet some people who could put him in touch with Apotheosis. Izuku told his second Scouter to scan to try out the new voice commands. He let out a sigh when nothing happened. Alright, version 2 will have to still rely on buttons. He wouldn't be moving into his new dorm for a few more months. He told her that this was what he wanted and promised to come over on the weekends. Mom was a little sad when she heard that he was leaving so soon. She asked him over and over if he was okay with giving up his dream of becoming a hero. Izuku would smile and say that he wasn't leaving the world of heroes forever, even though he had stopped being one. He didn't tell her how he was going to change the hero society and make real heroes. That was too much for her to know. Izuku put the scouter on his head and said, "I'll work on this later." He then took his mask out of the closet. He went to the door after putting on his white hooded jacket, gray combat pants, and boots. Finally, he covered his face by putting his black scarf around his mouth. Since Mom was already asleep, it was easy for him to get out without being seen. Izuku set his scouter to a 20-foot range as he walked down the street to make sure no one caught him before he got to that place. He got across the city by taking a train. He was going to a place in downtown that was in a pretty sketchy area. It was basically an empty underground parking garage where bad guys hung out and met. This is where Izuku got a job and met up with other people to plan their crimes. As for him, he wasn't looking for work this time. Instead, he planned to ask around for a place to hide. One of these jerks must know something useful. After getting off the train, he walked the rest of the way to the garage with a calm, sure step that was just for show. He was still scared when he saw the thugs on the street, because no matter how he looked, any of them could beat a boy like him who didn't have any special skills. Izuku knew he couldn't fight any of them, so he only relied on his reputation as a smart person who could plan things out. Some bad guys and low-level crime bosses liked him and helped protect him in some ways. After all, his smarts and ability to think strategically were valuable, and no one wanted to mess with someone like that. When Izuku got to the underground garage, he went back to the metal door and knocked 3 times. The eye panel opened for a second. The thug behind it looked at him, then quickly opened the door for him to walk in. Izuku smiled under his scarf. It had only been 6 months, but his reputation had already gone so far that he didn't need a password or an escort to get in. Izuku saw some groups and gangs that he had worked with before as he walked around the garage. He made sure to say hello, and his friendly attitude made everyone feel safer. He also asked if there were any abandoned buildings he could buy. No such luck, it looks like. He asked a lot of people, but none of them knew of any places, or the ones they did knew wouldn't work for him. Izuku left the garage after 3 hours to try somewhere else. He came up to her outside and made her an interesting offer. In the dark alley outside the garage, a voice called out, "Hey kid. Hiding in the shadows?" "That's so last year," Izuku replied. He took out his flashlight, shone it into the dark, and saw where the voice was coming from. He was a middle-aged man with gray hair and a smile that showed he was missing one of his front teeth. The man smiled and said, "Okay, you found me." He then put his hands up and walked out so he would be seen better. Izuku asked, "Can I help you, sir?" To keep things friendly. His scouter was already on him and would let him know when a quirk was activated. "I've been following your work and I must say I'm a big fan, Apotheosis," he said. Izuku laughed and scratched his cheek against his scarf. I guess I'm more popular than I thought." "You're just a beginner villain though, how would you like to go pro?" He wanted to know. It seemed like a good idea, but it was also probably not true. "Who are you?" Izuku asked him seriously. He kept a wary eye on him. "My name is Jiren, and I'm here to speak for the League of Villains," Jiren, who had now changed his name, said. "They'd like to invite you for a little meet and greet." League of Villains? Izuku was interested. He had no idea there was such a group. He usually dealt with small groups of bad guys who were only interested in making money and didn't care about fame. But this league sounded like they were trying to get famous. His scouter picked up on someone exactly 10 feet behind him and said, "Interesting." Izuku didn't turn around and said, "I guess the guy behind me is here to make sure I accept the invitation, whether I like it or not." Jiren was shocked that the boy knew. "I'm merely here to make sure you get to our hideout safely, should you choose to accept," he said. When Izuku turned around, he saw a man dressed like a butler with what he thought was a metal collar around his neck. A thick black mist seemed to be in or on top of the man's whole body. Izuku read the information his scouter gave him after scanning the mist and thought, a quirk level of 40, not to be trifled with. "I assume you're the leader." "No, the leader would send an underling, am I right?" "That's right. Will you be coming?" The misty man made what looked like a portal out of the stuff he was made of. Izuku spoke his thoughts out loud by accident. You know what, I think I'll check out this League of Villains," he said. "Oops, sorry, I sometimes say what's on my mind." He rubbed his head awkwardly. As Izuku walked over, he took a cautious step into the portal and disappeared. Kurogiri thanked Jiren for finding the boy with a nod and then disappeared. A hidden place. Izuku looked around the bar and said, "This is nice." Or maybe it was just a cover. The person wore black clothes and had light blue hair that was all over the place. They were sitting at the bar with only 4 fingers on their drink. "So you're the strategist?" asked an older teen as he stood up and turned around, showing a pale hand that had been cut off. "Apotheosis, so what's your real name?" "Hi." He held out his hand and didn't answer because he didn't want to be rude to the possible employer. Kurogiri came up behind them and said, "You might not want to do that." Izuku asked, "Why not?" Shigaraki put his 5th finger on the glass he was holding and said, "Because of this." He then let the glass break into dust. Izuku said, "Wow," and pushed a few buttons on his scouter to record everything so that he could look at it later. "That's an amazing quirk," he gushed, mumbling over and over about all the good and bad things that could happen because of it. What Shigaraki said was, "I don't like him." "Tomas, we haven't even given him a chance," Kurogiri said as he crossed the bar to the other side. "Apologies, I don't believe we've been properly introduced. My name is Kurogiri and this young man is Tamura Shigaraki." "Hello. My name is Izuku and I'm Apotheosis. It's nice to meet you. It's also an honor to be invited to this League of Villains. Always be polite, because these guys look dangerous." Shigaraki asked again, "What's your real name?" Izuku smiled behind his mask and said, "I'll tell if I ever decide to trust you with it." This made the other person growl in anger. "Wow, he's just as spoiled as Kachan." They paid attention when Kurogiri said, "This seems like a good time to do an interview." Izuku went over to the bar and sat down a few stools away from Tamura. "Since you're a strategist, it will be your job to help Tamura plan if you join the league." What Izuku didn't know was that Kurogiri's boss had told him what questions to ask Apotheosis and was listening to the whole conversation. "Let's say we wanted to kill the number 2 hero Endeavor. What do you think?" Izuku asked after giving it some thought. He said, "Well, first I'd check the weather." "What the hell does the weather have to do with it?" Shigaraki yelled. Izuku explained the first step of his plan. "I would make sure to pick a day when it rains a lot. Endeavor would still be strong, but outside in the rain, he'd be weaker with all that water dousing him. I would also suggest attacking him in a heavily populated area, forcing him to hold back lest he cause catastrophic collateral damage," he said. The 2 bad guys paid close attention to his plan, and even Shigaraki was impressed. Izuku was talking very quickly and chewing on one of his gloves as he went on. "It's not likely that other heroes and local police will just stand there doing nothing, so I also suggest a distraction. Maybe keep them busy with a small group of expendable underlings. Fighting up close is too dangerous, unless you're fire resistant, so attack him from a distance. Wear him down then go in when he's weak." He stopped to breathe. Now for the final blow. Tamura would need to wear fireproof clothes, and Kurogiri here teleports him up close. Endeavor is exhausted from the fight, but not out yet. Tamura suddenly appears in front and grabs a hold of him with his disintegration quirk. Game over. Shigaraki took a big breath and asked, "That's your plan?" "Unfortunately, there are still a lot of things to think about," Izuku said. "There's no knowing which heroes could show up to help him. For example, if All Might were to suddenly show up and there's no chance of victory. Oh. Also, according to my research, Endeavor is smart enough to know his own weaknesses and doesn't work in the rain unless absolutely necessary. And let's say we did want to take down the number 1 hero. What then?" Kurogiri was curious. It didn't take Izuku long to say, "I would need more data and factors before coming up with something solid." He had lost interest in what was happening to All Might. He would help this league get rid of him in any way he could. It shouldn't be hard to catch a liar like that. Izuku said in a dark voice, "I'm sure All Might could be beaten. He's just a man, not a god, and he can be broken just like any other man." He quickly moved from his stool to the couch and said, "He's in. I want him in." He was excited by the way the boy talked about All Might. His tone was mean, and he liked it. "Then welcome to the League of Villains," Kurogiri told him. Seeing that the boy looked uncertain, he asked him a question. "Is something the matter?" Izuku said, "Don't get me wrong, I'd love to join this group, but I have my own goals right now." He then rubbed his arm to show he was sorry. "Maybe when I finally get set up I can join, but not till then." The Mist Man asked, "What do you need to set up?" Izuku said, "I'm looking for a large, secluded area where I can set up a lab." He couldn't join until he found a place to turn into a lab so he could work on the forge. "We have a place like that you can use," Kurogiri said out of the blue. He was referring to an empty building next to the Nomu factory that was supposed to be used to store more of those creatures, but it should be fine for what the kid needed. "Really?" Izuku asked, shocked that they had what he needed. "Yes, if you agree to join, it's all yours." He was sure that All for One would be happy to give the boy a place to work. Since things went so well, Izuku thought he might want to say a little more about what was going on. Izuku sighed and said, "There's one more thing." He hoped it wasn't a mistake to tell these people, who were basically bad guys, too much about himself. "I'm going to high school soon, so is there a way that we can work out a schedule, perhaps even transportation?" From his seat on the couch, Shigaraki growled at him, "You're a bad guy, why do you need school?" "Technically, I'm only a bad guy sometimes," the boy in the hood said in a shy voice. I still need to go to school to accomplish my one true goal, but being a villain also helps with that goal, so you see that's the situation I'm in." "Okay then, can we call upon you when we make our plans then?" Kurogiri asked me, after Izuku agreed. The bartender in the foggy room gave him an untraceable cell phone number they could use to call him for a meeting. After that, a portal opened for him that led back to the alley where he was found. "I'm excited to work with you, Kurogiri-san and Tamura-san," Izuku said as he bowed and walked through the portal. "Those apotheosis are pretty interesting, don't you think, Shigaraki?" Kurogiri asked after the boy had left. Tamura said, "I just want that mind of his, what do you think, Sensei?" As Sensei showed up on the dark monitor screen in front of him, he said, "He should be very helpful. Learn from him, Tamura." All for One smiled to himself as he hid in a dark place. Apotheosis would be a great addition to their group for sure. Aside from that, he was interested in the boy. Why did he need a lab and what was his goal? Home. It was still dark outside, and Izuku sneaked back into the apartment. Mom wouldn't wake up for another 4 hours. He couldn't sleep again because he was too excited, so he chose to work on his next idea. Izuku took the box off of his bed and opened it to find a mess of wires, circuit boards, and mechanical parts inside. After getting his tools, he got to work, but not before thinking about the League and the two bad guys he met tonight. Tamura Shigaraki, disintegration quirk, seems a bit spoiled based on my first impression. He thought that if he could handle Katsuki Bakugo's annoying personality, then Tamura would be pretty easy. As Izuku stopped working on his project, he said, "Kurogiri, a teleportation quirk." He then connected his screen reader to his computer. By entering the passwords, he downloaded the information he got from the bad guys tonight and put it in different files so that it could be analyzed and broken down later. He typed in a few more passwords and opened a new set of files. He then copied the information he had gathered so far about Kurogiri's strange behavior into a folder called Space Stone. Taking a deep breath, he needs one more piece for his gauntlet. As Izuku thought to himself, he's mist, so does he even have DNA that can be sampled, or does the mist contain traces of his DNA? He closed the files and then went back to his new device. It's actually called the Force Field Projector, but it sends out a stasis field. Something that made an energy barrier. It was only a defense device, not a weapon like his next project. With his good name, Izuku could only go so far before he needed to do something to protect himself. He knew that one day he would have to defend himself against a bad guy or a good guy, and he would need this force field projector. It was best to be ready ahead of time, and he had a feeling that since he joined the League of Villains, he would soon be fighting. "Okay, test number 6, Izuku said. He put the big, awkward thing on his bed. He tried 5 times and failed each time, but he stopped believing in failure after giving up his dream of becoming a hero. He now thought there was no such thing as failing and that new doors always opened when old ones closed. You just have to keep looking for the right door until you get it," he told himself, throwing the tennis ball. As he did it, he was happy that the ball came back at him as if it had hit an invisible wall 3 feet away from the machine. The only sign of a barrier was the glowing blue ripples from the first collision, which went away quickly. "Yes." Izuku quickly put his hand over his mouth, hoping that his joy wouldn't wake up his mom. "All I need to do is make it smaller and lighter so I can wear it," he mumbled as he thought of ways to make the force field better. Even though Izuku would have written things down in his many books, it was too dangerous to leave any traces that could be used to find him. Also, he didn't want anyone to get his designs and copy his inventions or, even worse, use them against him. That's why all of his designs are kept on the computer, where they are protected by firewalls and programs that stop hackers. "I'm still not tired," he said as he put the thing away and sat down at his computer. He typed and clicked his way through designs for his carbon fiber armor, hover drones, and power glove. He would be able to work on the next 3 projects once Kurogiri gave him the lab. The forge would have to wait until he could find enough quirk users with DNA to make the stones. Tamura smiled and said, "Okay, time to end this." Izuku laughed and clicked a button. "Yes, let's finish him." They were playing a multiplayer video game called Blood Rage, which takes place in a world after the end of the world. The last boss of the game had already killed Izuku and Tamura several times. About 1 month went by before Tamura Shigaraki felt at ease with apotheosis. Enough to talk about their thoughts and plans with each other. Often because of the video games they played together, he always tried to attack his opponents where they were weak, while Izuku usually tried to make an opening or weak spot for himself. For example, when they talked about how to beat All Might, Shigaraki wanted a special creature called Nomu to beat him, but Izuku said it would be better to wait until the hero reached his limit and then crush him. It was easy for Izuku to get along with Tamura Shigaraki. Izuku did and said a lot of things that Kachan didn't like, but Tamura mostly listened. As Sensei had told him, he should learn as much as he could from apotheosis. Izuku thought Tamura was the leader of the League of Villains at first, until he met the mysterious figure that Shigaraki admired more than anything else on the monitor screen. He called that man Sensei, just like Tamura did. The man didn't say anything to him except a few small commands and pieces of advice. Damn it! Tamura yelled as his controller broke apart after they died again to the boss. Izuku said with a smile, don't worry, we'll get him in the end. The angry bad guy asked, what makes you so hopeful? When you live in a world where everything is against you, then you have to remain optimistic, even if everyone tells you to give up. I should give up. No, you should give up, Izuku said with one breath. Sorry, did I go off again? There were times when certain things at the bar would set him off, and he would start yelling about how unfair the hero society in this world was. For some reason, being around Shigaraki always made him act badly. The older boy didn't care, though. Izuku got up and walked over to the bar. I need to get back to work, and you need another controller, he said. Kurogiri-san, could you please send me to the lab? The bad guy asked. The bartender nodded and opened a portal. Bye, Tamura. He waved as he went through the hole. With real interest, Shigaraki asked, what is he always working on there? And Kurogiri said, I don't know myself, as he washed an empty glass. The times I've been there I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. Apotheosis likes to work on multiple projects at once. The lab, take off your white hoodie, Izuku. Then, put it over a chair and walk over to the computer. During his first month with the League, he used the money he had saved from the thefts to have materials, computer parts, and equipment secretly sent to a nearby location. With a little help from Kurogiri, he then had everything moved to his new lab. It took him a week to get everything set up after that. Izuku smiled to himself and said, back to work. He cherished his lab. Finally having a place that was just for him was great to him. He could work on all of his inventions and do his research there. A nice little building that would keep him from the mean world outside. He checked on the progress of each project as he walked by each table. The armor made of carbon fiber was coming together well. It was a special substance that was first used to catch and hold criminals. It was Izuku who thought it could be used to make a thin, light body armor. The material was also very flexible, so it was easy to shape it to his body. The power glove came next. Something he wore on his hands that sent out compressed energy waves from his palms and knuckles. There was no infinity gauntlet in it. It was just a simple weapon to help him fight until he could make the gauntlet. There were 8 battery cells along the sides of the device that looked like canisters. If they ran out of power or got damaged, they were supposed to be ejected right away so that corrosive fluid wouldn't leak out and hurt him. Almost everything was done with the hover drones. Small cameras that could fly around and record quirks in the same way that his scouter did. The body and propellers of these drones were made of light metals that kept them quiet and hard to see. The whole point was to spy on heroes and any quirk user that interested him. But if the drones were caught, it wouldn't matter because there was a program that would delete all the data if that happened. It would be impossible to trace it back to Izuku because he was so smart. Izuku pressed a button on the side of a padded armchair while sitting down, and a keyboard with mechanical arms rose up from the floor and put itself in front of him. The computer then turned on with a big screen. Files. He typed away at the keyboard and brought up the theory that all of his research into quirks was based on. The equations for the stones said that he couldn't just put together a bunch of quirks. They had to fit together like a puzzle. For Izuku, the challenge was to find the right quirks and get a DNA sample. He did have a clue about that, though. A place in Hosu City where researchers study quirks. They were said to have kept blood samples from heroes and regular people with quirks, which were all given to help the study of quirks. Izuku could get enough DNA samples to start working on the stones if he could get in. He already had some ideas about what kinds of quirks he wanted. He had to be able to teleport in order to get the space stone. Izuku was in luck, but warping quirks were not common and were hard to find. Because Kurogiri-san had that quirk, his DNA would be a great match for that stone. It would be hard to move the time stone. Izuku still hadn't found a quirk that could change time in any way. He didn't know anything about that until he could go into the Hosu lab and find out for himself. Izuku still didn't have a good idea about the Power Stone or the Time Stone. There were many possible choices, but none of them met the requirements for making an all-powerful quirk. If it came down to it, he might have to mix a few of them. The Reality Stone was hard to understand. In this case, his formula would be put to the last test. For this one, Izuku needed a lot of different quirks that let him change matter. There were many quirks out there, each with a different amount of power and range. It was so weak that even his mother could use it. Once he had the DNA samples, all he had to do was take the parts of their genes that gave them the power to bend matter to their will and put them together to make a superpower. He really didn't know what to do with the Soul Stone. There was no scientific way to measure or explain what a soul was. Mind and soul. What does a soul really mean? He would put this stone on hold until he made up his mind. There was also the question of what to use to make the gauntlet. It's not possible to use regular titanium. He thought of many things that wouldn't be strong enough to hold the stones. There had to be something else, something new. Enough of that, he said. I need to get my gear ready. I'll worry about the stones later. Tamura Shigaraki had big plans, and Izuku wanted to be ready for them all, in case he had to go with them. Time flex, Izuku asked with a raised eyebrow. Kill All Might? You were serious about that? He looked at him with his fingers over his face and said, of course I was. Are you in or not? Izuku asked. Why do you want to kill him? Shigaraki said with joy. He's the symbol of peace and the pillar of heroic strength. If I bring him down, the rest of the hero society will follow. Izuku cut him off in the middle of his rant by saying, that's not enough. When asked, what did you say? Shigaraki growled. What the heck does this little jerk say? Izuku paced the bar and chewed on the tips of his leather gloves. I'm just saying it will take more than that to destroy the hero society, he said. That's what you said you wanted, right? But people don't lose hope just like that. He snapped his fingers to make his point clear. The #1 hero himself told him, it takes a while, trust me, I know. You have to wear them down, break them down little by little, then deliver the final blow in one big blast that crushes all hopes and dreams. Izuku yelled, remembering how everyone had told him for years that he couldn't be a hero. That was the final nail in the coffin. That's right, he knew how to really break someone down. The world did the same thing to him. Tamura made fun of him and asked, then what do you suggest, strategist? Well, since you're so dead set on killing All Might, go ahead and do that, Izuku said. After that, you'll also need to kill Endeavor because he'll be replacing All Might as the next top hero. And then the next one, and the next one, and the next one, Izuku said several times to make his point. It will take some time, but eventually the hero society will crumble like a house of cards. Tomaru yelled, I don't care how many heroes I have to kill. That's my advice to you, as you said, I'm the strategist. Izuku would have smiled at him, but his scarf covered half of his face. End the backup. Oh, Tamura. Izuku smiled to himself as he thought about how pointless Shigaraki's goal was. You can't destroy this hero society no matter how hard you try. You're just one person with one league. Why break up society? Why not make things better in the world as it is now? That's what Izuku Midoriya meant to do. Change the world so that it would never look down on people like him who are weak and don't have any traits. About killing All Might, he also didn't want to do that. He would do what he could to help Tamura, but he didn't think anything they did would work. When it was done, his Infinity Gauntlet would be the only thing strong enough to beat him. But Izuku wasn't going to kill him. He was going to let him live and watch him win. He didn't want All Might to think what he did about him was right. That a boy with no quirks could become a hero. The strongest person in the world and a hero as well. I really hope the gag works. It needs to. It took away one of my quirks, but it can't take this away too. After a few months, after a long time, he finally moved out of his apartment and into the dorms at his new high school. His mother told him goodbye with tears in her eyes and promised to see him on weekends and holidays. He had a great deal with the league that worked out great. After class, he would get a text message with a nearby address that he could walk to. He would be warped to his lab or to the bar if he had to be there for a meeting once he got there. At this point, the meeting was running late because Tamura hadn't shown up for 30 minutes. Izuku got bored, so he pulled out his computer and started looking through his data on quirks until he got there. Shigaraki walked through a portal and slapped a phone in front of Izuku. He asked, what is this? Izuku was sitting at the bar and looking at some files on his laptop. Is this why you called me here? Tomaru hissed, just look at it. When he picked up the phone, there was a picture on it. It looked like a list of class times. That is next week's schedule for UA. Look. All Might will be leading a class of wannabe heroes in a rescue exercise in facility called the Unforeseen Simulation Joint. Izuku sighed at his colleague's impatience and asked, I take it you want to use this as a chance to attack and kill him? Alright, I'm getting the board. You're getting the board? Asked Kurogiri. Izuku said again, I'm getting the board. Toyo asked, what the hell is the board? Izuku went behind the bar, opened a cabinet, and took out a Japanese copy of Risk. He then put it on the counter. This is the board. Sensei asked me to make things easier for you to understand, so this is as easy as I can get. He then asked Kurogiri to use the information that Shigaraki had photographed to draw a map of the USJ, which he did on a large piece of paper. Izuku asked, hey, where did you even get this information? While they were waiting for Kurogiri to finish. The young man with pale blue hair said, I snuck into UA, as if it were nothing. How? I wouldn't even dare try that, the boy with no quirks said. Shigaraki laughed and said, I broke down the barriers and let the eager reporters in. Izuku was proud of Tamura-san and said, look at you, you're learning. Tamura glared at him and said, shut up and get to work, strategist. Kurogiri put the map down on the counter when he was done drawing it. These 20 blue soldiers will be the students in Class 1A, and these 60 red pieces will be the league. He put the tiny plastic soldiers on the map and then took out the special gold piece. This gold one will be All Might and this green one will be that Nomu guy who you still won't let me meet. It's best you didn't, Kurogiri told him. He knew Apotheosis was still a child and probably wouldn't be able to handle seeing that thing. It was also better for him not to know how it was made. Izuku gave Tamura the reins and said, "So you first. What's your plan?" Shigaraki yelled at him, "Why are you asking me? You're the strategist." The boy with green hair pointed at the small men and said, "Yes, but Sensei wants you to learn, and I agree." He then asked them in silence to come up with the best plan. All Might is the final boss, so we use the forces to wear him down, and then Nomu does the final damage, Izuku said with a sneer. "You're forgetting something. Class 1A isn't just going to sit there, and there are probably other pro heroes teaching there besides All Might," the boy said. The boy chewed on his gloves again, which was becoming a bad habit because the League of Villains was giving him so many challenges. "I recommend dividing our forces, set some aside to deal with the students and teachers." Tamura said, "Fine, I'll save Nomu for All Might," as he lightly scratched his neck. Izuku started moving the map pieces around and said, "Good idea. Let's save our best card for the big guy. Since Kurogiri can warp large groups of people, let's have him split up the students and send them to the different disaster zones in the USJ." He looked at the dark, misty man with hope in his eyes. The bartender said, "I can do this. Then while your forces keep them busy, Nomu fights All Might," Izuku said as he chewed on his fingers. "I'm not 100% sure this will work though." The shinobi asked, "Why not?" He liked the sound of it. Izuku looked at the map and all the plastic men that were set up around it and said, "There are still too many unknown variables. We don't know what type of quirks the students have. We also don't know for sure if All Might will be there." Tamura said, "Yes we do, he's on the schedule." Izuku replied, "But plans can change. Look, you said All Might has a limit, right? Well, if that's the case he might change his schedule around depending on his hero job, and if that's the case he will probably be swapped out for a different teacher. We could be doing all of this for nothing." Kurogiri told him to slow down. Once more, the boy talked too fast. When Tamura Shigaraki finally spoke, it was after a long awkward silence. "Sorry, but you get my point." He said with finality, "We're still stepping up the attack. We won't get another chance like this again." Izuku shrugged and got up from the bar stool. "Okay, suit yourself." He wasn't going to be there during the attack anyway. At that very moment, the monitor screen lit up to let him know that Sensei wanted to talk to them. "A decent plan, but should things change like you said Apotheosis, it would be best if you were there to advise Tamura. All the luck." There was no way Sensei could have missed what they were saying, because Izuku was now pretty much told to go along with the attack. Izuku gave the mysterious league leader a nod and said, "Of course, Sensei." Well, at least he could record strange things and try out the hover drones. Who knows? One of the students might have a useful quirk that he could use to make his stones. Aizawa told his students, "Stand back," as the dark portal got bigger. A young man with shaggy gray hair and long, pale hands that had been cut off stepped out. With anger, Tamura said, "It looks like your gut was right. He's not here. I thought schools always follow a schedule." "See, I told you there was a chance All Might wouldn't be here," said someone walking out from behind him. The second bad guy was shorter than the first. Under his white long coat with a hood, there was a gray form-fitting leathery material that looked like hexagonal scales and went all the way up to his neck. It covered his mouth and made it even harder to see his face. The pants are black, and the knee pads and shin guards are covered in gray armor. The boots are also black. "Tamura, you should always plan for these little setbacks in your plans." On his left arm, there was what looked like a big metal gauntlet with what looked like small round vents on the sides and knuckles. Shigaraki laughed as the portal behind them got bigger and more bad guys came through it. "Plan B then," he said. Aizawa yelled at the other pro hero, 13. "Get them out of here." In a flash, the hero in a spacesuit led the class quickly to the exit. With a fake worry, Izuku said, "Oh no, they're all getting away." Shigaraki said, "Kurogiri, I'll split them up," the dark mist said, forming the shape of a man. It then quickly grew into a cloud that rushed toward the students. "Good afternoon, everyone," Kurogiri said when he walked up to them. The mist spread out and covered almost all of the students, except for Ida, who quickly moved out of the way, and 13, who wasn't close enough. Bakugo tried to blast him, but failed because the mist covered almost everyone else. While that was going on, Aizawa went straight at the bad guys and killed them one by one with his quirk and capture weapon. Izuku said, "So far, this is going well." He saw Kachan among the students when he thought about them. With his too cool of a quirk, he obviously got into the hero class. Did UA not do psychological profiles on people who wanted to go there? Did anyone on staff look at his record from middle school? Izuku knew that they would kick him out if they looked into any of that. Or did his unique and very powerful trait make him too appealing to go to another hero school? One of the many things he promised to change when he took over was this weird, unfair system. In his world, Katsuki Bakugo and other people like her will never be heroes. Tamura told him, I wonder. Since he was busy watching Eraserhead fight and not paying attention, he chose to go off by himself and test his technology against Katsuki's amazing quirk. Kurogiri-san, could you warp me somewhere? If he could show that quirks aren't as unique as everyone thinks, that would be great. That is your job, right? The dark, misty bartender asked. Shouldn't you stay around to tell Shigaraki that? Izuku said in a calm voice, All Might isn't here yet, so he doesn't need me. His face turned dark. I just wanted to say hi, to an old friend. Very well, Zone of Ruins. Katsuki Bakugo smirked as he knocked out another bad guy with a well-placed explosion. These guys are weak. Eijiro Kirishima said, Yeah, not very manly to attack a bunch of students in broad daylight. As he punched out the lights of another bad guy. And that was the end of this wave for now. They had time to make a plan or get back together with the others. Someone in the shadows said, Oh, I agree with you 100%. The shorter bad guy with the white hood was standing there with the hand guy. He took a deep breath and said, I thought these guys could at least beat one class of first years. This is what Katsuki said. Who the hell are you? Then Izuku said, My name is Apotheosis, and I'm the strategist for the League of Villains. He then waved hello. Kachan wouldn't be able to tell it was him when he said, Nice to meet you, because the device in his mask made his voice a little fuller. Bakugo laughed at him and said, And why should I care? Usually I wouldn't get involved because I'm just here to give Tamura advice, but I kind of want to test something. The truth is that Izuku wanted to get back at Bakugo, and using some of his new gadgets against him to show that his quirk wasn't that great was just a bonus. I heard you Katsuki Bakugo got the highest score on the entrance exam. I wanted to see for myself how strong you really are. Bakugo charged at him with his fist raised to deliver an explosion right in the face of the bad guy. Wish granted. Under his mask, Izuku smiled and pressed a button on his belt to turn on his portable force field. When the blast hit the invisible barrier, it was pushed back, and a blue ripple effect appeared over it. Not bad, 30% strength was enough, he said as he pressed a few buttons on his scouter to save all the information. He was hit with both hands and told, I'm not done yet. Again, the barrier didn't move no matter how many blasts he fired at it. Izuku laughed when he saw his force field stop Kachan in his tracks and asked, Is that it? It would have been nice if he had this years ago. You fucking bastard. Kirishima put his hand on his shoulder and said, Dude, calm down. It's just to rile you up, the redhead said, but something that looked like a thick blue beam cut him off. After the blast, he went through the wall and out into the yard. Izuku took off his power glove and said, Sorry, but you don't interest me right now. What was that? Bakugo was confused. He thought this bad guy had some kind of barrier quirk, but that beam of energy came from the thing on his left arm. Izuku, who was dressed up, asked, Where were we? Oh yeah. This. He clenched his fist and waved it around in a big circle. The knuckles vents let out a big crescent of plasma-like energy that tore through the building's walls. Because she was quick, Katsuki ducked under it and fired a blast back. It was so hard that the explosion knocked Izuku off his feet and onto the floor. Ow. His carbon fiber armor and fireproof cloak kept him safe, but it hurt when he fell on his back and lost power. She charged him again and said, How do you like that scum? In a panic, Izuku turned up the shield to 50% and activated it. Once more, the explosions were safely stopped. The bad guy said to himself, You're as rough as ever. He made sure to keep a close eye out for any more tricky moves as he fired more power from his glove. He moved into attack as soon as he saw one. This Bakugo jumped over the beam by using his explosions to lift himself up and towards the bad guy, who was grinning ear to ear at how predictable his old enemy was. Got you. Izuku smirked under his mask and used a simple dial on his belt to make the shield's range bigger. Katsuki wasn't ready for the force field to get bigger, so she was caught by it and thrown back quickly. The blonde boy moaned, damn it, as he hit the ground. He felt like he hit a wall head first. He was hit by the other person's energy beam and slammed through the wall at the same time as Kirishima. A power cell came out of the glove, but Izuku didn't pay attention to it. The power glove was made to separate the cells when they got damaged or ran out of power. He walked down the building's steps and down the hall before going outside to face the person who used to pick on him. Who knew getting even would feel so good? When Katsuki tried to stand up, he coughed. It hurt more than that force field thing did when it hit him. Izuku jokingly walked over to him and asked, Oh my, do you need a hand? Bakugo yelled at him, Shut up you hooded freak. The bad guy laughed and pointed his glove at the boy. HMPH, temper problems, that's going in your file, he said. Die. Bakugo yelled as he jumped at him again. Izuku dodged backwards just in time to avoid getting hit. Once the hero in training knew that the barrier would go up in a few seconds, he didn't give up. What the bad guy could do was only dodge. He couldn't get far enough to use his power glove or have time to turn on his force field. Izuku let out a gasp of pain as he was hit several times in the chest. Bakugo grabbed the bad guy by the wrist and used his explosions to move in a half circle and throw him a long way. As the other student tried to get up, the hero student hit him in the back with a gun. He didn't stop there, though. The bad guy kept getting hit by the boy over and over with his fists and explosions. Midoriya thought that he would be a broken mess right now if not for his clothes. After what seemed like a very long time, Izuku finally saw a way out. As Bakugo was attacking, he grabbed his right arm and flipped him over to slam him to the ground. He was able to buy himself some time to get far enough away to safe. I'm starting to get disappointed, Mr. Number 1. Izuku yelled to get the other guy angry, even though he was hurt badly and in a lot of pain. If this is all you can do, then this school's standards have really dropped. Alright, that's it, Bakugo said as he stood up and pointed one of his grenade grips at his opponent. Oh, what's that supposed to do? Izuku thought as he carefully pressed the button on his shield. Eat this. When the pin was pulled out, there was a huge explosion that burned everything in its path. Izuku quickly turned on his force field and cranked it all the way up to 100%. When the dust settled, most of the ruins around the zone were gone, but Izuku was still standing there fine. The bad guy stuttered, what was that? Based on what he knew about Kachan's strange trait, he thought that those gauntlets must be able to hold a lot of his sweat so that they could set off such a big explosion. I can't believe this school would let him have something like that. Was UA run by crazy people? The jerk also broke his shield. The blast put too much stress on it and destroyed the power circuits. Bakugo asked the bad guy, how are you still alive? He seemed shocked that the bad guy was still standing. Izuku told him, so you were trying to kill me? That's not very brave. He reached into his belt and pulled out a special tool he had made for emergencies in case he needed to stop a hero or slow down a stronger one. It looked like an oval-shaped metal capsule about the size of a hand, with a small button on top. Catch! Izuku yelled and threw the button at the obnoxious teen while waiting. Even though Bakugo said, as if, and tried to avoid it, the capsule went off almost right away for some reason. The blonde was trapped by an explosion of lime-green sticky foam, and he couldn't use his quirk to get away. He got more and more stuck as he tried to move. Izuku asked, do you like it? He laughed as he watched Bakugo scream and move around. I call it trap foam, he said. Everyone always assumes a grenade or capsule will go off in 3 seconds. That's why my trap foam grenade is designed to go off in 2 seconds. It really catches you off guard, doesn't it? Damn it. Katsuki kept trying to fight his way out of the foam. Izuku aimed his power glove at the hero trainee's face and said, well, it's been fun. As soon as he fired, good night, someone grabbed his glove and swung it off course, just in time for Bakugo to barely avoid being hit. He turned to face the other UA and said, huh? He pulled his hand away as another power cell was thrown out. He forgot about a student. Man, that's not cool to attack someone who's down, Kirishima said as he stood in front of Bakugo to protect him. Izuku was shocked and said, not a scratch on you, even after a full blast. You must have an impressive quirk. Thanks. You're pretty tough for a bad guy, Kirishima said while keeping his guard up. It was dangerous to mess with people who could keep up with Bakugo. Izuku looked down and said, me? I'm just a strategist and an advisor. I shouldn't even be here in the battle, but I wanted to test something on Mr. Number 1 over there. Test what? That would be telling, Izuku told him as he shook his finger at him. So what? I'm a bad guy, and as a bad guy the first don't go telling the heroes my secrets and evil plans, he said, unless he already had the upper hand or an infinity gauntlet. But I'm a nice guy, so I'll leave you two alone, he said. He had already shown that he was a nice guy. Kirishima took a defensive stance and asked, do you think I'll let you go? As the strategist for the League of Villains, Izuku said, let me give you some advice. He then pointed his power glove at him. He said, one blast would be enough to knock you out of the way and leave your friend open for my second attack. The bad guy laughed as he saw the red head sweat. You could dodge it of course, but that would mean your buddy gets hit instead of you. Damn it, Kirishima said as he nervously looked back at Bakugo who was stuck. Izuku said, you can either attack me or let me go. He then turned around and walked away. When the redhead was no longer in sight, he let out a sigh of relief. It was nice meeting you, but I have to get back to Tamura-san. He sighed as he turned around and tried to pull Bakugo out of the sticky foam. That guy was smart, too smart. Center of the US. I'm back, Izuku said as he walked toward the middle, stepping over the many lying bad guys they had brought with them. He saw that the superhero Eraserhead was badly hurt and being held down by a huge, hideous creature with muscles. As he turned off his voice changer, he asked, "What do I miss?" Tamura asked, "Where the hell were you? I had to bring out Nomu early." Izuku looked at the thing carefully and asked, "That's Nomu?" He saw a lot of strange and scary things while working in the underground for different bad guys. He was sure that the Nomu with its big black body, beak-shaped face, and open brain was going to be in his top 10. "Answer the question, strategist." "Whoa, calm down, Tamura," Izuku said as he took a step back and put his hands up in a non-threatening way. "Well, I just wanted to test my new device." Wasn't entirely true. That Bakugo student was tough, he said. When Aizawa heard the last part of what he said, he opened his eyes. The homeroom teacher thought, "This kid looks like a student himself," going by the height and voice. She wondered what kind of superpower the bad guy in the hood had to beat someone as smart as Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku crossed his arms and said, "I don't know why you're so mad. All Might hasn't even shown up yet." "Exactly," Shigaraki hissed and scratched his neck wildly. "He isn't here. Why isn't he here? I want him here." Izuku nervously moved away and said, "Jay, just take a deep breath." Tori yelled at the person who helped him plan this, "Strategist, tell me why he's not here, before I turn you into dust." Izuku paused as his scouter told him to pay attention to something. "If you just let me." A person with a lot of quirks was quickly coming up to the facility. When the doors to the USJ burst open, a tall, intimidating figure walked out. Wait. There's only one person who could have a quirk level over 100, All Might had shown up. Tamura couldn't hold back his excitement as he said, "He's here." Izuku would have licked his lips if he wasn't hiding his mouth with a mask. Indeed he is. He was about to gather a lot of raw data, which made him almost salivate. "Great. I almost have as much obsession as Tamura." Everyone paid attention when All Might said, "You bad guys made a mistake by attacking my students." "Why? Because I am here," he asked without smiling. Moving faster than anyone could see, he knocked out every bad guy he came across, freed Aizawa from Nomu's grasp, and took him away from where the battle was about to start. Izuku was having a huge fanboy moment over this and said, "This is going to be amazing." He might not like All Might as a hero as much as he used to, but he couldn't hide how powerful he was. Power that he wanted to beat when the gauntlet was over. He told all of the hover drones to move to where he was by pressing a button on his scouter. Izuku told everyone to record the fight. "Nomu. Get him." Shigaraki told the huge creature to charge All Might. "You're a big one." The main hero blocked Nomu's punch and then tried to hit back, but it didn't seem to work. Even though Nomu was hit hard, her skin never got scratched or bruised. Tamura said as he watched the fight, "That won't work. He has a quirk that lets him absorb shocks." Izuku told him, "Wow, that's smart." He mumbled something while chewing on his glove. "He'll need something else though. Super strength and shock absorption will work, but they won't be enough to beat someone like All Might." "Shut up and watch." Tamura laughed as he waited for Kurogiri to move. It happened when All Might tried to suplex Nomu. Under them, a portal opened up. The top half of All Might and Nomu's bodies came out the other end of the portal. For as long as the beast held him, he would be cut in half as soon as Kurogiri shut the door. Game over. Shigaraki was so happy that he was about to see All Might suffer death. Or he would have if Kurogiri hadn't been thrown away by an explosion, which broke his concentration. Then a trail of ice came in and frozen Nomu's arm and leg. Izuku thought to himself, note to self. Make the trap foam thicker, as he watched Kachan hold Kurogiri down with his metal collar. That boy with the red hair must have used his hardening trade to get through it faster than Izuku thought. The young bad guy was also interested in where the ice was coming from. He saw a student with red and white hair, a scar on the left side of his face, and ice all over the left side of his body. An ice quirk, and a powerful one at that. While Shigaraki went on and on about how All Might was only interested in violence, Izuku was downloading all the data his drones had gathered into his scouter and learning as much as he could about the Ice Boy's quirk. Izuku walked up to his leader and whispered, "We might want to start making plans for a retreat." Nomu was half frozen, and Kurogiri was stuck. "Retreat!" Shigaraki yelled at him. "Nomu has more than just shock absorption," the speaker said. Everyone watched in horror as the creature's frozen limbs broke off and then came back to life in seconds. Super regeneration. "Didn't I tell you, All Might? Nomu was created specifically to destroy you?" Izuku thought to himself, but still. Tamura yelled, "Nomu! Kill them all!" The monster with the beak ran forward and tried to crush the first person it saw, who happened to be Bakugo. He was saved by All Might, but Kurogiri was now free to move and fall back next to his friends. All Might told them, "I need you all to take Aizawa and leave the area." He kept his guard up and his eyes on the bad guys. Bakugo yelled, "Fuck that, go now." All Might yelled as he ran at the Nomu at an incredible speed. They started hitting each other quickly. "He's right, we can't help," Todoroki told Bakugo as he put his hand on his shoulder. When Bakugo reluctantly had to face the truth, he helped Kirishima pick up their unconscious teacher and gave the white-hooded bad guy one last murderous look, which was enough to beat him. "Weren't you listening?" Tamura asked as the two kept hitting each other. Nomu possesses shock absorption. The hero smiled and said, "Absorption, not nullification." During that time, Izuku noticed that All Might's punches were hitting the creature over and over in the same spots. He knew that the ability to absorb things wouldn't last for long. Not long after, Nomu was hit so hard that he flew through the dome of the USJ, which shocked the bad guys. Oh! Izuku was scared and tense, not only because they were up against All Might without their strength, but also because he knew Tamura would be very angry. Shigaraki growled and scratched at his neck. "He cheated. We were wrong. Sensei was wrong. He's not weakened." The shinobi said, "Don't look at him. He's definitely gotten weaker." As he did when they first met on the roof, Izuku saw smoke coming off the hero's body. That meant he would soon go back to being weak and skinny like before. "We can still kill him, Tamura." "We can't. The UA staff will be here soon," he said. Izuku knew they were coming. A few minutes ago, they were just a small dot on his scouter, but they were moving quickly. He told them, "We need to retreat," but they didn't listen. "You're right, Kurogiri. Let's end this." Tamura ran at All Might, who was still standing there because he didn't want to move or risk changing back into his old form, leaving their strategist behind. The Warp Gate bartender followed to help. This won't go well, Izuku thought as he watched with worry. As if the prediction had already come true, a bullet went straight through Tamura's outstretched hand, stopping him in his tracks. The teachers had already shown up, most likely because a student had gotten away and gone to tell them. As soon as the last few bad guys were killed, Tamura took a few more bullets to the legs and was immediately covered up by Kurogiri. At the very end of his strength, All Might tried to punch the mist away, but Izuku blocked his way. Izuku raised his power glove and turned up the energy to 100% at the same time as his punch. The boy's glove was completely destroyed in the collision, which sent him back through Shigaraki's hunched-over body and Kurogiri's well-placed portal. As All Might turned back into himself, he asked, "What was that?" That bad guy in the hood had a burst of energy from his fist that made his weak punch useless. A hidden place Tamura pushed Apotheosis away from him and yelled, "Get the hell off of me." Izuku groaned as he landed on his hurt arm. Kurogiri asked the kid, "Are you okay?" after seeing him block All Might's punch. It was pretty much impossible to fix, but Izuku said, "I'm fine," and gently took off what was left of his power glove. "Bumps and nearly dislocated joints in my arm, but nothing's broken," he said as he rubbed his hurt arm. "Him? What about me? I got shot several times," Shigaraki complained. "All of our subordinates were killed, and All Might is still not dead." He sounded like he was about to lose it. A polite Izuku asked Kurogiri-san, "Can I get an ice pack?" as he sat down on the couch. Kurogiri said, "Yes," and then went around the counter to get them some first aid supplies. Tamura yelled and grabbed his hand. "We even lost Nomu." Izuku said, "I told you so," in a sneaky way. "I said that there were too many unknown variables. We didn't know what the students' quirks were, and there was a good chance All Might wouldn't be there immediately, causing us to exhaust too many of our forces early on. In the end I was right." Shigaraki told himself over and over, "We lost. I lost." When Kurogiri gave Izuku the ice pack, he took the bandages and began to treat Tamura's wounds. "I failed, Sensei." Izuku stared at the wall as he put the ice pack on his arm and said, "There's no such thing as failure. That's my motto. Keep trying until you get it right." He turned to face the hurt older boy. "With all the data I collected, we'll be more prepared next time, and if we fail again, then we'll learn and try again. Everyone told me that I was weak, useless, and couldn't do anything. Look at me now. I ended up taking on the best student in the hero class and I won." "Well said, Apotheosis." The screen went black and Sensei's voice came on. "I agree completely. Tamura, you have to learn and keep going. Sooner or later you will succeed and become a symbol of terror to all the world." Tamura shook his head in honor. "As for you, Apotheosis, I would like to have a word with you about the data you collected and what you plan to do with it concerning the League." Izuku started to say, "Oh, all right. Well, for starters I was able to compile a," but a light laugh from the screen cut him off. "No, not here. I'll talk to you in person," Izuku said. Hearing that order made him swallow his lump. The bartender named Kurogiri opened a portal that led him to the League of Villains' mysterious leader, and Izuku had to do what he was told. He put the ice pack down nervously and went through the warp gate. When Izuku finally saw Sensei, he said, "It's nice to meet you in person." The man didn't have a joke, so he wasn't sure if what he said in person was funny or not. Just a bald man with no eyes who was covered in scar tissue and could only speak with his mouth. The man was being kept alive by machines that were hooked up to him with tubes and wires. He was wearing a simple suit. It was awkward for the boy to say, "Nice to meet you, Sensei." Izuku was scared and shaking. Even with all the medical equipment around him, this man gave off an aura of raw, unchecked power that was terrifying. The presence also interested and excited the boy because it was something he hoped to have one day. "Don't be afraid of me, kid," the bad guy said in a calm voice. Even when he said, "I have no intention of hurting such a valuable asset to the League," it didn't make things better. Izuku rubbed the back of his head. "I'm not that important, sir. I'm just the strategist," he said. "Yes, but it was because of you that my apprentice Tamura is learning to think in different ways and see plans from other angles," Sensei said. "For that you have my thanks." Izuku bowed and said, "Happy to help, sir." The mood changed quickly when the speaker said, "That brings me to my next topic." The boy felt like a canary in front of a very big and hungry cat. "I would like you to imagine my surprise when I found out what you were really working on in that lab of yours." When asked what he meant, Izuku said, "I'm not sure what you mean." But he was really scared that his boss would find out about his secret project. "That was very smart of you, my boy, to leave all of those tools, inventions, and plans lying around," Sensei said with the only smile left on his face. "That alone would satisfy a normal person's curiosity. Even all your files are so full of designs and notes on quirks, no one would think to look a bit deeper?" Izuku's eyes widened. "If so," Sensei looked through his files. "How? When?" The man answered as if he knew what he was thinking. "Why do you think I ordered you to go with Tamura during the attack? Of course I wanted you to advise him, but I also wanted to take a look at what you were doing in the lab we so generously gave you." As the boy with green hair said, I can see how this looks." His mind was working like crazy to come up with a way out of this. Since he couldn't run, he could only talk his way out. "Your true files were well protected. I'm astounded by your technological skills, but one of the quirks I possess allowed me to bypass and unlock them," Sensei said. "One of the oddities." Izuku was interested in what he meant. He had more than one quirk, right? "Then I found this strange formula that even I didn't fully understand, lists of potential quirks, notes on genetics, and a blueprint for a device you dubbed the Infinity Gauntlet." The boy felt his stomach drop at that point. He knew that much. He was pretty much dead now. "I must say, I'm truly impressed." Izuku put his thoughts on hold and asked, "Huh?" He was fully expecting to be scolded and probably attacked. "You plan to harness the DNA of multiple quirk users to create the ultimate quirks in the form of a stone which you will then attach to the gauntlet for you to use. Summed up, it's pure genius. You like it?" Izuku was really not sure what to say. He wasn't ready for his boss to react this way. "It's just, I thought that you'd be, angry." "Angry?" asked Sensei with a smile. Izuku's green eyes got even bigger as he said, "Why would I be angry? It makes sense that a child without any quirks would want to empower himself. In fact, you're the first person to actually do it." "Oh. Forgive me, but I looked into you. I first investigated that academy you're going to, found a list of the first-year students, and it wasn't that hard to discern who you were. For me at least. I have no doubt that the heroes will never figure out your true identity, Izuku Midoriya." Thank you," the boy said, feeling completely open. Izuku took off the hood and mouth armor cover because the man knew who he was and there was no longer any reason to wear the mask. No one would ever guess that a boy with no quirks was such a bad guy or what he was up to until it's way too late to stop him, All For One said, complimenting him on his intelligence. Old Bad Guy was amazed that this boy had set himself up so well to reach his goals right in front of everyone in the Hero Society and the Bad Guy Underworld. Izuku laughed and rubbed the back of his mossy hair, which was getting messier. "It was kind of the point. I wanted them to fail because they didn't care about people without quirks, and it will." The boy said this with a dark look on his face. He really hated people who looked down on people who didn't have any quirks. Sensei thought, this boy would have been a great apprentice if I hadn't found Tamura. Alas. Izuku is determined to reach his own goals. He doesn't even need a teacher. A student who can do everything on their own. "Izuku Midoriya, I want you to know that I fully support your project and." All For One paused to think about what he had learned about the boy. Because Izuku already knew about All Might and his weakness, he knew that he had to have met the one and only hero in person. Besides that, he knew that this boy now really didn't like All Might. After putting everything together, it was clear that Izuku really liked heroes, especially All Might. When he met his hero, this poor, normal boy who everyone was against must have asked him if he could be a hero too. All Might told him no, as any hero or quirk would, that he couldn't do it without a quirk. He couldn't fully picture how terrible Izuku must have felt, but he knew it had to be unbearable. That your idol turned you down after many other people said the same thing. What did he do? Did he cry and complain about his life like everyone else who wasn't born with a quirk? Izuku no decided to change things and make something of his lack of quirks by using the only thing he had, his sharp and powerful mind. He made All For One very proud. He was also thankful to All Might for once in his long life, because it was his rejection that sealed the deal and turned Izuku's brilliant mind against the good guys. This is why the scarred man chose to be both kind and mean for the first time by saying something this boy had probably never heard in his whole life. I believe you can accomplish great things. Izuku was shocked and asked, what, did he understand that right? Somebody said, I believe in you. All For One couldn't see it, but he could hear the sobs. Izuku got down on his knees and tightly grabbed the front of his white coat. The older man was very kind to give the boy back the hope that had been taken away, but it was also mean that a bad guy did it. It didn't really make the world look better, did it? In this world, heroes turn him down because he is weak, but bad guys praise him for being smart. Everything is wrong. Izuku whispered as he wiped his eyes, you believe in me. Thank you, sir. Sensei smiled and said, thank you. Now then, I have an offer you might be interested in. Afternoon in the lab, his body finally let go of the stress he was feeling once he was safely warped to his lab. Even though Sensei was kind to believe in him and offer something so generous, he was still a very scary person. There was a guard around the boy the whole time. All For One. He was interested in the strange things Sensei did. He told the boy everything about his weirdness and what it did. After being given some information, Izuku wasn't sure what to do with it, making the choice to put it aside for now. Izuku let out a sigh as he took off his carbon fiber armor. That thing was a breeze to put on and take off. Once it was all off, he went to the mirror without a shirt on. He had a lot of bruises on his chest from the fight with Bakugo. Besides that, he saw for the first time that he wasn't as skinny as he used to be. He looked pretty muscular after the 11 months he spent as a bad guy, doing jobs all over the place. But that wasn't enough. Kachan would have beat him if it weren't for his tools. It was time for Izuku to get stronger. Also, he probably would have liked to have a stronger body when he made the gauntlet. Who knows how his real biology would react to his made-up quirks? Making yourself bigger wouldn't be too hard. He could change his diet and move and set up his machines in the lab without using the lift. He could do it himself. As Izuku walked away from the mirror, he said, I guess I should make a training plan. He typed in the passwords while sitting at his console and pressing a few buttons. He saw that the safety programs were not working properly, which meant that Sensei was able to get to them. He would have felt like his privacy had been invaded if the man hadn't stood by him. When Izuku plugged in his scouter, it had all the footage and data that his drones had collected during the attack on USJ. He smiled and said, now then, let's see how Class 1A did. The drones were destroyed in the shockwaves of All Might's fight with Nomu, but luckily everything was saved on the scouter. He now had video of every hero course student. Their names, how they look, any quirks they have, and how they fight. One of them might have had a trait that would help a stone. Sensei also told him to make a copy of the data for Tamura to study once it was put together. There was also the analysis of All Might that he had to give to both Sensei and Tamura. This is going to be a very busy night, US Thursday. Detective Naomasa Tsukachi told his friend Toshinori Yagi, also known as All Might, so far we have 3 bad guys who were leading this attack. They were both in the nurse's office at the same time, where the hero was getting care for his wounds from yesterday's fight at the USJ. Kurogiri, the villain that looked to be made of black mist, he seemed to possess a warping quirk. Toshinori said while sitting up in bed, a group of bad guys with someone like that on hand can be very dangerous. The officer looked through his notes and said, then there's the leader, this Tamura Shigaraki. From what I heard from the students and the bad guys we caught, he was in charge of the League of Villains. He has a decaying quirk that lets him disintegrate whatever he touches. The hero asked, what about the third one? I was getting to that. From what I could tell, that person was the group's leader, the detective said, taking a break from his notes. According to the statements of young Bakugo and Kirishima, he went by the name Apotheosis. Toshinori asked, are the two okay? He was afraid that the bad guy had hurt his students. The two are fine. Kirishima's hardening ability protected him from the villain's power and Bakugo was a little banged up, but has fully recovered, he said. They weren't able to figure out Apotheosis's quirk unfortunately. Katsuki Bakugo said he fired some sort of energy from his hand and erected a barrier to defend himself, so maybe an energy manipulation quirk. The hero thought about how his punch was blocked and said, perhaps, but I did notice a device on his hand. He said, it could be a machine used to focus his quirk. I've seen many heroes and villains use things like that in my time. Naomasa looked worried about this. Then there were the many drones that were made by hand. It looked like there was someone in this group who was mechanically smart. It was already bad enough that bad guys were working together, but now add in a smart strategist, a man with a warping quirk, and someone who is making them weapons and gadgets to boost their powers, and you have a recipe for disaster. Though what really troubles me is this villain's possible age. Yes, I saw that too, All Might said with a sigh as he looked down at his rough fingers. When I got there, I thought he was a student who had changed his costume because of his height. When he blocked my punch, I got a good look at those wide, scared eyes, he said, but he didn't say if the eyes looked familiar. He felt like he had seen them before, but he couldn't remember where or who. The detective said, "Yeah, that sounds like a kid to me." A voice came into the recovery room and said, "How sad." Together, they checked to see if Nezu, a small white mouse that looks like a person or a bear, had arrived as the leader of UA. That someone so young turned to a life of villainy. The detective said, "Principal Nezu." The principal asked, "But what could make a boy turn to the bad side?" Toshinori said, "You seem more interested in this one bad guy than the other two." The small animal walked up to them and said, "Oh no, the others worry me too, but this one bothers me more. Something about his villain name doesn't feel right. The word apotheosis has two meanings." As Naomasa explained after looking up the word, the final complete development of something. It can also mean the elevation of a person to divine status, essentially someone becoming a god, Nezu said. The detective laughed and said, "This kid is really cocky and conceited to give himself such a title. Most bad guys are. I fought someone who called himself a destroyer of worlds," Toshinori said with a small laugh. He wasn't much of a fighter when 2 good blows were enough to knock him out. All Might finally remembered the 4th bad guy after a short awkward pause. "Hey, what about that big one I fought? We caught it, but it doesn't seem to be able to talk, and it didn't fight us or try to get away," the other officers said. "They think it couldn't do anything on its own, like a mindless doll. What bothers me is that it apparently had multiple quirks, shock absorption and super regeneration." "Yes, it definitely did," the hero said of the question. Detective: "You told me there was only one person who could add more quirks to someone if he wanted to." He looked at his friend. "Someone who you fought before, right?" Nezu told him, "It looks like your old enemy has come back." All Might got angry and clenched his fist. That man was still out there, working behind the scenes to change things. He may have used this league as a front for other things at the time. It didn't matter what he or the League of Villains planned, Toshinori promised he would stop them. After 2 weeks with the word, "delivery," in his head, the security guard looked down and saw a boy holding a package. The baseball cap blocked his face, but the uniform showed that he worked for a package delivery company. From his age, it looks like he works part-time. The guard looked at him with doubt and said, "I wasn't aware of any package delivery today. You do know the lab is closed?" "I didn't," the delivery boy said with a nervous laugh as he scratched his cheek. "Heh, oops. Okay, I'll keep it here until tomorrow when the lab opens again," the kid said. The guard felt bad for him because he must be new and not know what he was doing. "Thank you, sir. This is my first week on the job," the boy said as he gave the guard the package. He smiled and pulled out a small clipboard. "Can you sign here, please?" "Sure," the guard said. He put the box under his desk and quickly took the clipboard, signing it on the line at the bottom before giving it back. "Have a nice day, sir," the boy said as he left the security checkpoint and waved as he walked out of the building. The security guard turned back to his newspaper and said, "Nice kid." He knew that the unexpected delivery to the closed lab would probably be the most interesting thing that happened today. He had no idea that the package under his desk had begun to lightly shake. When it stopped, a small metal nozzle stuck out of the side and let out a gas that no one saw. The guard began to feel tired and sleepy. He slammed his fist down on the desk and asked, What?" After a short time, the door opened again, and the delivery boy was there, this time dressed as a bad guy. He wore a gray carbon fiber bodysuit that fit his thin body very well, black armored boots, and a white long coat with a hood. He had something on him that looked like a metal briefcase. "This bad guy's stuff is getting easier," Izuku said as he looked at the guard who was out cold. He walked around the desk to the computer, put a drive in the USB port, and let his fake program start up the building's security system. He didn't even check my ID. "I spent a whole day making a fake one," she said. He also turned off the gate for the metal detector. Izuku smiled under his hood as he walked into the elevator and said, "Let's get to work." Hosu Quirk Research Lab, a place that used blood donations from heroes and quirk users to do experiments and study in order to learn more about how quirks work. It was almost too good. It just so happened that the daughter of the head of research and development was in a UA, an important sports event. The man closed down the lab and invited all of the other scientists to watch the game at his fancy house. To see his daughter win and bring home the trophy. Prideful idiot, the man's stupid pride gave him the perfect chance to sneak into the lab and take all the blood samples for himself. No one would be able to stop Izuku from getting what he needed. Also, there was only one security guard in the building today, which made things even easier for the young bad guy. He knew that the blood was kept on the 6th floor because Jiren told him that was where the elevator stopped. Izuku didn't pay attention to the security cameras as he walked down the hall until he found the right room number. His phantom program made him invisible to them. He snuck inside and saw a desk with a few computers on it and a wall with a metal door that was locked and said, "Sample storage. Do not unlock." Izuku smirked and said, "Let's start." He then sat down at the computer and hacked the door. There was plenty of time for him. During the sports festival, the place would be closed, and the guard wouldn't get up until later tonight. He not only opened the storage vault when he finally cracked the system, but he could also see the list of people and quirks from which the samples came. As he printed out the list, Izuku couldn't help but laugh at how easy it was. Getting the papers from the machine, he went into the storage space that was now open. He shook for a second because it was so cold inside. "Wow," Izuku said as he looked around what looked like a small hallway with shelves on both sides where many blood vials were set up. He thumbed through the list in his hand first, looking for the emitter quirks that would help him change matter for the reality stone. As he read the list, the young bad guy said, and chewed on his gloves. When he found some that interested him, he put the metal case he had brought on the floor and opened it to find a portable storage unit inside. "Telekinesis," he said. He went down the shelves, took a vial for each one, and put them in his case. Izuku found some useful ways to change the way water moves called hydrokinesis. Electrical manipulation, earth manipulation, magnetic manipulation, wind manipulation, he said as he grabbed every vial that had anything to do with controlling matter. It's possible that Izuku even took vials from all the enhancer and amplifier quirky things. "What is this?" Izuku asked as he looked at a quirk on the list that was marked with the words, "Further research." This blood came from someone who had a strange ability to halt time. Based on the information, the power to freeze time for 3 seconds in a 3-yard area. That wasn't enough on its own, but if he added a few weird amplifier quirks, it would be great. Then he might get a super powerful quirk. He grabbed a vial with the sample inside and put it in his case as he went down the shelf. Izuku then looked for a quirk that could change the way space worked, which didn't seem to happen very often, though. But there was one on the list. A trait called Flash Warp. That, according to its description, could instantly teleport the user up to 10 meters away. He eagerly took the quirk user's blood vial. He was interested in another one on the list. There's a bug called Conversion. The ability to change how another quirk works. For example, you can take an emitter quirk and change its target or area of effect, or you can even reverse the effect itself. Lastly, he got vials of samples of all the dampening quirks, which were skills that made other quirks less powerful. They could be useful at some point. Izuku closed the case, left the vault, and locked it behind him. When he got back to the computer, he plugged in a drive and copied all the research data about the quirk users whose samples they came from as well as any other data the scientists had gathered about them. The young bad guy with green hair took out the drive and turned off the computer when he was done. His first stop was the lobby, where he went through the security checkout process again, making sure to grab the virus drive from the computer that was there. Izuku laughed and patted the sleeping security guard on the shoulder before leaving. "Keep up the good work," he said. He changed clothes in an alley and went back to where he left them. His delivery boy costume was still folded on the ground, along with his backpack. Quickly, Izuku changed back into a delivery boy outfit, put his bad guy costume in the backpack, and wrapped the case in some extra packaging paper to hide it. When he was done, the boy went out into the alley and down to the main street, where he blended in with everyone else. To get back to Kamino Ward, where his secret lab was, Izuku took a train. The thief was already gone by the time the guard or the researchers found out what had happened.
So that's it for today. I will continue this story in next part. Till then, bye bye.